I'm Debbie Fischetti.
And I'm Megan Rothschild.
Welcome to Skin Talk, brought to you by the Melanoma Education Foundation. Melanoma is not just a skin cancer, and we are here today to tell you all the details of why it's so important to be educated on how deadly this disease really is, and how it should not be taken lightly and should not simply be regarded as just skin cancer. Our show today is particularly exciting as we have world-renowned dermatologist Dr. Stephen Franks visiting with us today, so I'm very excited about that. We'll also be discussing why it's important to protect ourselves from the sun all year round, particularly in the winter. Also finding out what's the worst cause for melanoma, and a simple but extremely helpful demonstration on how to give yourself a good skin examination. And of course, we cannot forget Megan's hot tips of the week. So stay tuned. You're not going to want to miss this. Well, Megan, first I want to thank you so much for giving me the opportunity of going to AIC.
Yeah, absolutely.
I know that that's, surviving skin type of thing, so I was very happy to fill in for you because I know that, you couldn't make it. So.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's great that you got out there because it's so important to get out to the college students and make sure that they're hearing about melanoma and about the tanning beds and UV exposure and whatnot. But how did it go?
Oh, it went very well.
Good.
The students were amazing.
Receptive?
The teacher, yes,
Good.
very receptive. The professor was so taken by the information, as almost as if he was one of the students as well.
Right.
I usually start off my presentations as, okay, everybody in the audience here, can you please tell me what your thoughts are of melanoma?
Right, what they already know, kind of test their knowledge type thing. Yep, exactly. Did they know nothing?
Not one person could answer.
Yeah, I know.
Well, I'm sorry. One person answered. Guess what they said?
It's skin cancer?
Yeah.
It's just skin cancer, maybe?
Yeah. And I said, okay, could we elaborate on that?
Right.
I mean, I am in a class and I am teaching students. So,
Yeah.
But the average ages in that class were, I want to say like 22 to like 37.
Oh, wow.
And there was about almost 22 people in the class.
Oh my gosh.
And I was dumbfounded to realize how little they knew about melanoma.
Right.
You know?
It's just not a commonly taught subject.
No. And, so I really felt very good to go there because walking away, people finally got it.
Right.
So then my next question to them was, okay, how many of you here know what HIV is? Mm-hmm. What are the cause and effects of HIV? Because they obviously didn't know the cause and effects of melanoma.
Right.
And everybody answered, and they had like 100 comments.
Right, exactly. Everybody knows about that.
Right. And that's what everybody graduates school or even into high school. Every part of their life, that's what they're getting taught or exposed.
Right.
Now, we talked, I know a couple of weeks ago on our show about the statistics about HIV and melanoma. And I use HIV as an example because everybody knows that.
Right.
But there was a study done that there was 54,000 cases a year, new cases.
New cases, right? Yep.
Right, new cases of HIV that are found. Now, that's a large number.
Right.
But compared to melanoma, there's 114,000.
Wow.
Double.
Over doubles.
Over double.
Yep.
Of new cases found of people being diagnosed with melanoma.
Well, why do you think that is? Why do you think that there's less cases of HIV?
Education.
Right.
Everybody everywhere gets educated about safe sex
and
what to do. They know the risks, they know the cause and the effects. So therefore, even though 54,000 is not a small number by any means, but it's extremely small compared to melanoma.
Right.
Nobody, I don't want to say nobody, but it's very, very slim. When you ask anybody what melanoma is, they're like, okay, heard of it.
Right.
It's cancer, right? But it's like no big deal. You just take it off, right?
Well, that's the common misconception is everybody hears HIV, they make the direct link to AIDS, and it's, this huge epidemic. But when people hear melanoma, it's kind of like, oh, no big deal. You just go in, you get it cut off, you move on with your life. So I don't think people know enough yet to make that connection. Melanoma equals deadly.
Right.
The deadliest
as they would
form.
with HIV.
Exactly.
Because look at the statistics.
Exactly.
If people are getting educated about HIV, so therefore the statistics are extremely lower.
Right.
If people you know, would get more educated about melanoma and truly understand the effects, you know, how to protect yourself.
Exactly.
You know, just like HIV, what not to do, what to do.
Right.
I mean, it's all about, you know, the choices that you make in your life.
Exactly.
I mean, you know, there's people who smoke. Okay, well, if you keep on smoking, there's, you know, consequences to that.
Exactly.
Melanoma, unfortunately, there's a hereditary thing.
Yep.
But it's also what you do
Exactly.
with your life.
Well, and that's a great point, because to elaborate on the whole educating people about their skin and knowing what to look for, that's the whole point of the MEF.
Right, right. It's, you know, MEF's sole, you know, focus is about education and trying to get into more and more schools.
Right.
With their skin check program, particularly the middle schools and the high schools. So by the time they get to college,
Right, they already know.
they already know, or at least, you know, will be like, oh yeah, I remember taking that in high school.
Exactly.
Or hopefully what they learned from high school, they'll take on in their life and do different things in their day-to-day activities, like putting on lotion or just being more in tune to things like they do with safe sex or anything else in their
Knowing not
life.
to smoke.
Right, exactly.
Careful about drinking. Yeah,
Exactly. So that's the main thing is education.
Exactly.
And education is going to save a life.
Yep.
And it's like if you had this power, if you had the means of saving somebody's life, wouldn't you?
Why wouldn't you do it? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, and I'm very excited because in keeping with the theme of education, we have Dr. Stephen Franks on
Yes.
today, dermatologist that's been practicing for 33 years, so extremely
He's
knowledgeable. He's going to give us some
very
great tips, and stay tuned for a skin check with Dr. Stephen Franks.
Have you or someone you know suffered from melanoma? Melanoma is the deadliest form of cancer and kills one person every hour. We need your help. I'm Deborah Fischetti, School Development Director of the Melanoma Education Foundation. Our mission is to inform people about the deadly disease through education, early detection, and prevention. Our Skin Check lesson is issued by hundreds of schools nationwide to educate teens about melanoma. We rely on volunteers and donations from people like you to support our mission.
I used to use tanning beds and now have over 20 scars from questionable moles, one of which was melanoma. Melanoma rates are increasing faster than any other cancer, but don't let this deadly disease keep taking innocent lives. The Melanoma Education Foundation provides free educational services, but we need your help. Please visit skincheck.org for more information.
I see a lot in my line of work, but there's nothing more terrifying than watching someone suffer from melanoma. I'm a melanoma survivor. With your help, we can make a difference.
Melanoma is among the most aggressive killers of all cancers, but is curable if detected early. I'm here today because early detection saved my life. Join me and support the Melanoma Education Foundation and help us save more lives.
Melanoma almost took my life. Don't let it take yours. I'm a 5-year survivor, and without early detection, I wouldn't be standing here today holding my children. The Melanoma Education Foundation is here to help. Get educated. Every second counts.
Please, take charge of your health and the health of your family and make a difference. Visit skincheck.org today. Visit skincheck.org today. Welcome back. Here we have with us today Dr. Stephen Franks, over 33 years experience dermatologist, so we're very happy to have you. Thank you for coming on the show today. As I'm sure that, you've heard, waiting for us to bring you on, our conversation about the statistics of HIV and melanoma and how the melanoma statistics are extremely higher than HIV. And in our personal research, is we feel that it's the lack of education for melanoma. Now, in your line of work, you know, this is what you see every day, all the time. How do you justify or feel about those statistics?
Well, I think they're basically true, yep. Some of the newer data shows even up to 120,000 new cases reported per year. Now, what's happened over time is that awareness, because of organizations like yourselves and educating people about what to look for, coming in sooner, they're recognizing the abnormal lesions on their skin. So the majority of the melanomas are relatively thin, and most of the people who come in are cured of their melanoma. But still, somewhere around 8,600 a year die from the melanoma.
And is that obviously because of not realizing what they have on their skin, not catching it early?
Right. I think, you know,
Misdiagnosis.
humans tend to go into denial, especially men, I would say.
I'm glad you said that.
And so we see something that's changing, and that goes for all types of skin cancers as well, that, you know, well, that's going to heal, or it's probably nothing, and
Right.
I'll just let it go.
And the biggest thing of it is change.
Change is key. And of course, if you can't see the lesion, then you don't know if it's changing. But the incidence of melanoma continues to go up somewhere between 3 to 7% per year. And the biggest group that we're seeing that in now are young women. So late teens, 20s, early 30s, possibly related to tanning habits.
Right. I
I
was
was
just
just
gonna
gonna,
ask
yeah, me too. It was,
Yeah, that was exactly what I was going to ask is obviously that age group, they're the tanning beds, there's a bit of a vanity issue there, wanting to have that tan glow because you think it's a healthy look. Is that, you know, you were saying that's probably where the correlation falls, right?
I would say there's a major social impetus to look tan,
Right.
especially before certain events, and people still look at it as a sign of health and well-being. And so there's a lot of pressure on these young women to look tan. And it's not until they get into their 30s and 40s that they say, gee, maybe I shouldn't be doing this.
Exactly.
and that's the whole point, just trying to, you know, can't emphasize it enough, to just try to get out there enough to let people realize before it's too late.
Yeah, exactly.
You know.
Now, with the tanning beds, is that generally UVA or UVB exposure, and what's the difference?
Well, ultraviolet light basically is part of the energy spectrum that's emitted by the sun, and it's divided into 3 categories: UVA, UVB, and UVC. So UVC has the most energy and the least penetration, and all of that basically is prevented from reaching us by the ozone layer. Most of UVB actually is interrupted as well, and UVA, which is the lowest energy but deepest penetrating, makes up most of the ultraviolet light that reaches us.
Okay, now a lot of people, I heard a tip actually recently, the way to remember the difference between UVA and UVB, UVA, A for aging, and UVB, B for burning. Is that something that people can use to kind of remember the difference?
Well, it's definitely true. It's not the whole story, but it's
Right.
definitely true.
Little tip. What are some helpful tips that people should be aware of in order to protect their skin from melanoma?
Well, we talked about natural protection, which is the amount of pigment that we have in our skin. Also, hair protects us from the sun.
We're looking at our
I know,
arms.
women
Am I
shave it all off,
protected?
so.
That's right. So I would advocate for hairier women. But there's, the advances in sunscreens have really been helpful. So we have what we call broad spectrum sunscreens, which block both UVB and UVA.
Which is important in a sunscreen, right?
It
to
is
make sure
important.
it says that.
Now,
Okay.
I was reading that too, because there's a lot of people conscientious about organic and all natural and that kind of thing, that as long as you look into the ingredients of sunblock and it has zinc oxide in it, that's like the main ingredient of protection. And then on the flip side of it, I've also read, I don't know how true it is, that that there's certain ingredients in some that they feel enhances the skin, the cells or something like that,
Right.
magnifying
The
possible
potential.
melanoma,
Oh, melanoma.
possible melanoma because of the ingredients that are, I don't know if that's you know,
Is
if
there any
that's
validity
true.
to that?
Yeah.
Well, basically there are two types of sunscreens. The inorganic, which are zinc oxide and titanium dioxide. The zinc is probably a little more effective. They micronize it so it doesn't look white on the skin, and they make it into small particles. And those basically work by reflecting ultraviolet light radiation. The organic products absorb the energy from the sun and change it, interact with it, and emit it in the form of heat. And so using a combination of those two types of sunscreens can be very helpful.
Oh, okay.
So not using anything isn't a recommendation.
Not an option.
No,
Right.
you know,
Because
one
there's
of
some
the
people who have come to me and said, "Oh, I'm sure you get it too, that my skin is so sensitive, and I've tried 10, 20 different types, and if they make me break out, or it's
Right.
uncomfortable, or it makes me have dry skin."
Right.
You know, so whether it be that they're fearful that there's something in the ingredient that's more harmful to them seeking into their skin that over time could be damaging, or that they have a reaction to it. So what would you suggest to some? Have you gotten people like that?
Sure, yeah. Well, we live in a time where information is so readily available,
Yeah.
and it's difficult to ascertain what's true and what isn't.
Right.
And so rumors get started, and people are fearful. The good thing about the sunscreens is that they stay superficial and they don't interact with the body. They don't get into our bloodstreams. And there's never been any evidence in humans that they cause any problems. So I would not worry about that. There are two things about sensitivity. One is allergy and one is irritancy. So how often the sunscreens cause allergy has gone down dramatically over the years. So the early PABA type sunscreens did cause some allergic reactions, but we don't see it very much anymore. So most of the problems, like Deb was talking about, are mostly irritation from something in the vehicle, something that is a preservative or a fragrance or enhances penetration. So there are many so-called hypoallergenic products out there, and you could speak with someone at a cosmetic counter or with your dermatologist, and they could recommend some products that are less irritating.
But it's
Right.
definitely important to put on something.
Yeah, I think the bottom line
Right.
is use
Right.
something, because
And to apply it
Right.
like every hour, every 2 hours.
Well,
kind of thing.
the big advance has been in the improvement in the sunscreens and inclusion in many cosmetic products. So I talk to people about putting a moisturizer on every day that contains a sunscreen with a sun protection factor in the 20 to 30 SPF range.
Okay.
And then if you think of it and can reapply it, say at noontime, then the incident light that you get driving, walking, whatever, you're protected from. And you can use more aggressive sunscreens when you're out in the sun.
So now, one of the things that I also read is that you should wear sunscreen indoors too, because you can actually get
I
UV
heard that too,
exposure.
like in corporations and the
Big
industrial
windows.
lights,
Yep.
and being by a big window and things like that.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, not to be fanatical, like
Right.
to be
Right.
like,
I think
okay,
the amount
but I
of
think
light-
the intermittent
right.
sun, like here you're in all day, and maybe you go out for like a half hour or so for lunch, and then you're
You don't
coming
think
back
about it.
in. Right, you don't think about it. And then, okay, then come the weekend, you're out in it all day, and
Right.
then you're boxed up in an office, all day long. So, from my studies, the northern state, or the northern belt of the U.S. is just as high of getting melanoma, if not more, than you would think Florida or the
Florida,
southern
yeah,
belts,
right.
because of that. Is that not true?
I don't think so.
Because of the intermittent of it.
Well, the highest incidence of melanoma tends to be closer to the equator, and
Oh, yeah.
the number one area is Australia and New Zealand.
Oh, yes.
So
Australia,
you have
that's
all
bad.
these light-skinned people in a very sunny
Surfing.
climate. That's right. And so I think that can be important. Now, maybe what you're getting at is the fact that melanoma may be higher in office workers than it is in people who work outdoors all the time, because it's felt that intense intermittent sun exposure is more important for causing melanoma than a cumulative type of sun exposure.
Yes, like rather than being out there all the time, but the intermittent of it,
Right.
it's sort of like, it's almost, like when you exercise, you exercise real, hard and heavy for a week and then you don't, and then you go back to it, you're more apt to injure yourself or hurt or injure your muscles because of the non-consistency of it. So the skin is sort of like, what am I doing? I'm in the sun, I'm not in the sun, and the body's reacting, or almost like boiling, like water on a stove kind of thing.
Yep. Well,
all right.
Good
Well, good.
stuff.
I'm glad we got that cleared up. Well, now we have a question from one of our viewers.
Oh, yes.
Right, that came in from an email.
Yes,
Megan,
one of our viewers sent us an email. I read that a melanoma less than 3/4 of a millimeter thick is usually 100% curable. Because skin is thicker in some places than in others, does this prognosis depend on where the skin is located?
well, I think the total thickness of the melanoma is key. And there has been some work looking at what areas of the body are at greater risk. But I think that when the pathologist gets the specimen and looks at it under the microscope, the best prognostic factor is that less than 0.76 millimeters or not.
Well, what's going into the sydermis? Like the level, like, because it almost is like an iceberg. If you see a little bit on top, it's the growth of it that's on the bottom. So it's the gradual, thickness of it. Because what you see on the surface, right, is one thing, but what's growing underneath is
That's true. You never know by looking at it. So that's why you want to try and get the entire suspicious growth out and then have the pathologist look at it. In answer to the question, I wouldn't say that it's 100% curable. The non-invasive melanomas, what we call in situ melanomas, approach 100%. But from there to 0.76 or 1 millimeter, the risk is very low, so less than 10% of succumbing to the melanoma. And then it increases significantly the deep melanoma is beyond
it grows
0.76 vertically. Right.
So that's why I was thinking, like, what you see on the surface, you may be like, okay, that's not so bad, but it's
the growth into the skin.
triple that underneath, because obviously we can't see that. But it's the change, it's the color, it's all the other aspects of it that are giving some indication that something's wrong.
That needs to be checked.
And then, and then the different levels of the skin. I mean, you know better than me, like I forget the names of the different, but there's a lot
Epidermis.
the epidermis, and
The
then
dermis.
the dermis. And then what's like the one, like there's the really dangerous part, like when it reaches certain, like where a melanoma would be fatal or considered fatal.
Well, if it's greater than 4 millimeters, then the prognosis is quite bad.
And what part of the skin level does that?
Well, it doesn't always match up because the thickness of the skin varies from area to area.
Yeah, see, and I think that's where he was coming from, probably. The question, right? Maybe that depending on, some areas are thinner and some areas are thicker, would that make a difference if the melanoma is a certain amount of, but I guess not.
What you're talking about are clock levels, so I think it's more important to look at total thickness.
Than really where it is on the
Yes.
on the skin,
Well, thank you so much for being here today. We have a little gift for you.
Oh, thanks.
Yes.
We are an official talk show, so now you have to carry that around the office and let people know and all that.
I will do that.
And tell them to watch.
Yes, absolutely.
They could, go online.
Yes.
Maybe not while they're working, but
we're going to get people in trouble now. Thank you so much.
But yes, you were such a pleasure to have on the show, and we thank you so much for answering our questions.
My pleasure.
So stay tuned. Coming up next will be my tip of the week. Hi, I'm Megan.
And I'm Debbie.
And do you want to be skin safe with Skin Talk even when we're not on the air? Visit our brand new website, skintalk.org, to get all the tips and information you see right here on our show.
Plus, we want to hear from you. So email us your tip of the week. Tell us how we're doing, and if you'd like to be featured on the show. So email us at skintalk.org.
Welcome back. It's time for my tip of the week, and I have one that a lot of people don't really remember to do. It is so important to wear sunscreen when you are snowboarding, skiing, and being out in the snow.
Yes.
You know, a lot of people, they go up on the mountain to do their skiing. They don't realize that for every 1,000 feet of elevation that you go up, it's actually a 2% increase in the UV exposure that you are receiving.
I think it's just that people, another misconception is because it's the winter time, it's cold, even though the sun's out, I'm so bundled up with my coat and my hat that there's no skin exposed.
And then you get that burn from the ski goggles.
Yes, yes, exactly.
So that's my tip of the week. Make sure that you wear the sunblock even on the slopes.
Yes, it's important. It will save you in more ways than one.
Oh yeah, embarrassment and health-wise.
Yeah. Well, a big applause to Dr. Franks for joining us today. Thank you so much for tuning in. For an overview of today's show, more tips, or how to obtain information about the melanoma education or surviving skin, please go to skintalk.org. Be sure to watch us again, as we will be airing once a month on your local public access channel. So check your local listings for the next airing dates and times. And thanks for watching. The Melanoma Education Foundation would like to extend its deepest and most sincere sympathy to all the families that unfortunately lost a loved one to melanoma this past year. With the MEF Skin Check program, MEF educates more and more students in more and more schools and will continue to save lives. Education is the key to finding early detection for melanoma. Our educational work continues, but sadly enough, we still lose loved ones to this devastating disease. But every day, every month, every year that we continue to spread our message and educate, the amount of loved ones we lose gets less and less. At the end of our segment, we are paying tribute to those who lost their lives to melanoma. And in loving memory, their courage, their strength, lives will be saved. We will never forget them and always cherish them.